On this edition of Dolphins Today, we're handing out free agency grades for what Miami has done, at least so far. Probably a few more moves to come, but a lot of them, re-signings, additions, losses, have already been made by Miami. So into a full week of the actual free agency period, the non-legal tampering stuff already through. It's a great time to do it. I will give my overall grade at the end of today's video. You guys, since I'm sure you have a good feel for it already, can give your grade for me at the pinned comment of today's video. A, B, C, D, or F. How do you agree with what the Dolphins have done so far in free agency? Let's start with the additions. Offensively, players they've signed or re-signed, in the case of Salvon Ahmed, Braxton Berrios, Isaiah Wynn, Robert Jones, all back on pretty cheap contracts. Jonnu Smith of this bunch got paid a decent amount. He is the new starting tight end. Jody Fortson will fight and compete for a backup tight end role. Jack Driscoll will compete for a backup right tackle, maybe swing tackle role. He could maybe do some backup guard stuff too. I have learned that's actually pronounced Aaron Brewer, not Aaron. Aaron Brewer will likely be this team's starting center with Connor Williams unsigned and coming off an injury. He got a pretty expensive deal. 4 new defensive linemen as the Dolphins pulled out the shotgun and went, let's see what we hit to replace Christian Wilkins. Neville Gallimore, Deshaun Hand is back. Benito Jones could very well be the nose guard, spending most of last year with the Lions. Jonathan Harris will fight for a role. I do love the Shaq Barrett pickup. We'll spend some more time on all these moves in depth in a little bit here. Jordyn Brooks and Anthony Walker in at linebacker. Kendall Fuller will replace the released Xavier Howard at corner. Siran Neal will be kind of the new special teams piece for the Dolphins, coming over from Buffalo. And Jordan Poyer finally actually is indeed a Dolphin. They also re-signed / extended punter Jake Bailey, but he's a punter, so he does not count. The losses in free agency, those who have found new teams at this point, are notable. Cedric Wilson goes to the Saints. That's okay. Robert Hunt and Christian Wilkins are the very painful ones. Those were massive losses. 2 of the largest contracts given out in free agency. Hunt with the Panthers, Wilkins with the Raiders. That will fetch a 3rd-round comp pick for both of those players. Raekwon Davis to Indy on a 2-year deal. Andrew Van Ginkel gets paid by Minnesota. Jerome Baker, in what amounts to a trade, basically. Baker for Jordyn Brooks swap out. 2 safeties also leave. Deshaun Elliott to Pittsburgh and Brandon Jones to the Denver Broncos as well. Now, how upset are you about losing Christian Wilkins and Robert Hunt? Because those hurt. It's tough to say you're a better team when you lose 2 players like that. Scale your upsetness for me, 1 to 10 in the comment section, especially if an ad plays on YouTube. Let's go more in depth on these moves. Jordyn Brooks, originally I think had been reported as 3 years, 30. Really more like 3 years, 26 and a quarter. So you're talking about a year, $1 million per year and change difference on that front. I like this move by Miami. You needed to get another linebacker in there. And in a marketplace that was a little bit tricky to figure out early on, I think paying Jordyn Brooks less than $10 million a year is a good deal. So this individual grade, I'll give it a B+. I think Brooks can be a good partner alongside David Long. I wouldn't have wanted to pay him more than $10 million, and the Dolphins didn't end up doing that. His numbers have shown promise. The tackle numbers for the one were higher because he had some coverage issues. He's gotten better from a coverage standpoint. I would trust Anthony Weaver to figure out what he wants in a linebacker. I think him and Brooks and Long can form a pretty darn good duo. Kendall Fuller, meanwhile, is also signed with the Miami Dolphins, and I am actually quite a big fan of this particular move. 2 years, $16.5 million for Kendall Fuller. I will make note that there's some void years tacked on this, so to put this deal in perspective, you're paying Kendall Fuller 2 years. It really comes more like 2 years, 15 with incentive stuff again. His cap hit this year is going to be $2.5 million. That's a good move by Miami. That's an A grade for me. And they can move on after this offseason if they wanted to and finagle their way through the salary cap market there and not have to pay a bunch of money. Yeah, he allowed a bit high on the touchdown side, but he was still a very productive player for the Commanders, and I thought was the top free agent corner in a market that has not moved very much so far. He is, I think, your veteran cornerback too now. I'm curious in the long run what will eventually happen with Cam Smith, but for a team trying to win games now, adding an impact piece is not a bad idea. Aaron Brewer is next up here. I assume the Dolphins' next starting center. He could play some guard for them as needed. I haven't seen the actual nitty-gritty contract details yet, which I find curious. 3 years, $21 million. For now, I'm going to give that a C-plus grade. I have concerns with part of Aaron Brewer's game, The pressures allowed are a red flag for me at center. I hope he can have a better successful ground game option there. I just wonder if the Dolphins got a little bit anxious after seeing Connor Williams go down, didn't like Liam Eichenberg, who could blame them, and the center market was not very good. So it's not a bad signing, but it's not the same like I love it or same great value signing as others. Jordan Poyer, still waiting on those contract details, 1-year deal. Normally we don't see the details for a 1-year deal. It means that player signed super duper cheap. So operating under that assumption, I will give this grade an A-. We have, obviously this channel spent so much time last offseason around the potentiality of Jordan Poyer coming to Miami. Now he finally does. And it's not like his numbers fell off that drastically this past season. Yes, the interceptions did go down, but he was still a productive safety and a starting caliber safety as well. So I like that move for the Dolphins to add some safety help. I'm really a big fan of adding Shaq Barrett. I have always liked his game. You can wind back the clock many, many years ago to when the Buccaneers first signed him when we were here at Chat Sports, and I'm like, this is one of the best free agent signings. I love this kid. Other teams should have been involved there, and ended up being exactly right. Now, you're not getting that same version of Shaq Barrett anymore, but 1-year deal up to $9 million, up to probably doing some work there, call it maybe 4 or 5 in terms of the guaranteed money. I love that move. You needed to add a veteran pass rusher. With Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb coming off of injuries, you could not let it ride with those two and see what else happens. Yeah, he's older than Van Ginkel, won't be around as long. You're paying him less. That's fine with me. If you have not already checked out this sweet Dolphins NFL Jam shirt, now is the time to do so. Tua and Tyreek Hill on there. If you're a fan of those throwback games, did you ever play NFL Blitz? No? Really? Jeez Christ. You can get the Dan Marino NFL Blitz one as well. We'll put the link to this shirt in the comment section and the description of today's show. It's chatsports.com/DolphinsJam. Keep an eye out. Sometimes those are indeed on sale. Back to Shaq Barrett here before we go more in depth on some of the other players who have signed or lost with the Miami Dolphins. The sack numbers dipped this year. The pressure numbers dipped a little bit, but it was kind of a more extreme number from that perspective. You're not going to get 10 sacks Shaq Barrett. I think you can get 6 sacks out of him, though, with the way this defense plays and the talent on it, even without Christian Wilkins. I think it was a great signing. Now, technically, before free agency began, they did go out and acquire Jonnu Smith. 2-year deal, up to $10 million. Barely $4 million is guaranteed. So if they wanted to, they could again move on after a season. I give it a B+. You know, the tight end market was kind of weird. Funny to see Mike Gesicki get a 1-year prove-it deal for like $3 million, somewhere in that range. You needed a better passing game tight end. You needed somebody over the middle who could be a bigger body that wasn't a receiver and was better than Durham Smythe. With this move not impacting the Dolphins' comp pick formula, I have very few complaints about it. It's the exact type of move I think teams like to make and that carries little downside, right? Like, you're not going to be able to talk yourself into, hey, we just overpaid for a good player who's going to be great, though. It's, hey, you paid for a good player, you're probably going to get about what you would anticipate there. All right, a re-signing, Braxton Berrios, 1-year deal, up to $3 million. He could still be your slot receiver. He could still be a return guy specialist for you. And if he's your receiver 4, you're not overpaying him there either. B- on that front. I do want to see what the up to number is really about there. I grade it as A is great. B is good. C is average, D is bad, F means somebody's got to be fired. So a B- is not a bad grade. What was your favorite Dolphins free agency move this year? Any player they signed, re-signed, or even chose to let leave? Sound off in the comments. Isaiah Wynn is next up here. 1-year deal. Again, back with Dolphins. Still no details on this front. So I'm going to grade it the exact same way I did Braxton Berrios. Solid, smart depth signing. We'll see what the actual money ends up looking like. So I resort to change my mind on that and a few others. But you had to get some offensive line help, right? Or at least retain some of the line help. I still think guard is a significant area of concern for this Dolphins team that you probably want to spend one of your first draft picks on as well. We'll go quicker on some of the other guys here. Jake Bailey, the punter, is re-signed. It's a punter. Who cares? Robert Jones, 1 year, $2 million, so a little bit less than I think the RFA tender would have been. That makes sense to me. Neville Gallimore is back with the Dolphins on a 1 year, is signed, with the Dolphins on a 1 year, just under $1.8 million deal. Fully guaranteed. It's pretty cheap. No comp pick impact there. I'll give it a B. It's a good signing. I don't anticipate Gallimore suddenly being better than he ever was in Dallas, but I think he can be a good piece for you. Anthony Walker, $1.38 million, most of that guaranteed. I think for a time I'm like, oh, he's going to start for you. Well, then the money came out and they signed Jordyn Brooks, so I'm like, oh, he's just your linebacker 3. Okay, that works just fine. B+ grade here. Walker's missed some time with injuries. All that stuff are very valid red flags and concerns. But to pay basically the vet minimum, just above it, for a backup linebacker, how can you be mad at that? Now, if you haven't already, please subscribe for more Dolphins YouTube videos. Link is below. It's youtube.com/DolphinsNews. Hit that sub button so you don't miss out. Some more moves here along the lines. Deshaun Hand back to fight for a roster spot, along with Jonathan Harris. None of these D-line moves are going to replace Christian Wilkins, but you need a depth anyway. You got to sign some players, so I understand it. Jack Driscoll was not great for Philadelphia last year. I'm curious what the guaranteed money is. See if he's guaranteed a spot, he has to fight for one. Hope he has to fight for one. Saron Neal is kind of the new Keon Crossan as like the core special teams guy, so no complaints there. Jody Fortson, it's a maybe makes the roster at tight end, so it's fine. Doesn't move the needle. Salvon Ahmed back again on a cheap 1-year deal. He will once again fight for a roster spot. And then still no details at this time for one Benito Jones, who is back with the Miami Dolphins. Miami to Detroit. Love his character and his attitude. He's a very funny person. I give it an A, though. You needed a nose guard. Jones is not going to be nearly as expensive as Raekwon Davis was and will be serviceable, I suspect, from that area. So before we get to my grades and my explanation overall, how do you grade the Dolphins 2024 free agency class, so far? A, B, C, D, or F? Again, it's at the pinned comment of today's video. Overall, I really did like the additions the Dolphins made. I thought their additions across the board, offense and defense, were good. I have very few complaints about the individual re-signings and signings. However, the losses this team sustained are massive. Most importantly, Robert Hunt and Christian Wilkins hurt the most. Did they get overpaid? Probably. But that also doesn't make your team better. And my goal in free agency is, can you make your team better without sacrificing too much? My final answer there is they kind of are similar. So I'm going to go right in that average to low end of good range. C+, B- grade for me, somewhere in there. I like the individual stuff, but Wilkins, Hunt, and more, that's going to really hurt Miami.